I came across a girl the other day on the internet by accident. Her name is Eugenia Cooney, and she has a channel, a very popular channel, about fashion. She shows people outfits and makeup and jewelry and all kinds of stuff. I guess she's been doing it for several years. I had never heard about her because I don't look up stuff like that. But I was watching a different video and they mentioned her. So I looked her up and I started watching some of her videos, and I discovered very quickly, just from the very first one that I watched, that she definitely has a very major eating disorder, and she's in the later stages of it. The videos that I saw, I mean, she's emaciated. She's literally skin and bones, and she's a beautiful girl, and it's very, very sad, and I've been thinking about her a lot and praying for her. I've seen some videos of people talking about her, and some of what I've heard, I know it's all genuine concern, and I'm concerned too. But some of it some of the videos I saw were people saying that she is controlling the eating disorder, staying thin on purpose to get views, and she knows that her channel makes a lot of money because she's so thin, and that she has to stay thin in order to keep getting the views and stuff like that. And that's the one part that I disagree with. And the reason that I disagree with that is because in my past, at 12 years old, I developed an eating disorder. I had anorexia. And so I understand the emotional and mental aspect of it, and the addictive part of the problem. And I won't even call it a disease, because it's more of an addiction and a mental thing that just takes you over. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the thing that probably, well, some of the things that I think anyone with an eating disorder would have in common, whether they come from a wealthy background, a poor background, a middle class background. I don't think any of those things matter. I came from, well, kind of vacillated. We were kind of poor for certain periods of my life, but more middle class. But I know I've seen stories of different people with eating disorders. Some of them come from a family where they're very high achievers. There's a lot of expectation in the family for the child to succeed, to be their very best, whether it's in sports or academically or whatever. It's a high achieving family where a lot's expected of the child in that sense. But there's also kids that come from families where it's not so much about high achieving, but it's about being perfect, and maybe it could be coming from the mother or the father or both, but they learn somewhere along the line that they have to be perfect, that they have to please everyone, that they're not good enough, that no matter what they do, that they just can't please people, or they just don't have a sense of real value of who they are, that they're good enough just as they are. They're always feeling like they're not good enough. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about it more in the first person because of my own experience. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but when you have the the uh, the low self-esteem and the desire to be good enough, and you feel like you're not, um, and you feel like you need to please everyone, it's brutal. It's a living hell. I grew up in an abusive home. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother was in survival mode. And I had two siblings, but I took on the role of the people pleaser and the peacemaker and the one that was the perfect child, in order to keep life as peaceful as possible, to keep my mother and anyone else that I needed to keep them happy, to learn how to please, to learn how to read people, to know what they wanted from me. So I was kind of like a chameleon, that I would just become the person they wanted or needed me to be. And it started in my family, and then it went on outside of the family, whether it was boys or teachers or whoever, just learning to have really good radar and learning how to be very perceptive and intuitive to figure out what people wanted from me so I could be that. And always feeling not good enough, always feeling like I couldn't quite be what people wanted me to be, and having such high expectations for myself that I could never reach my own expectations. And so beneath all that, or in addition to all of that, the feelings of low self-esteem and lack of confidence, and I'm just not good enough, but on such a deep level that it wasn't just I'm not good enough at this or I'm not good enough at that, but I have no value as a person. Like, I'm at such a deep level, I'm just not enough. I'm not good enough. And that is a torment for your soul, especially when you're young. But in addition to that aspect of it, there's this striving for perfection. I know when I developed my eating disorder, I was 12 years old, and I didn't want to feel the pain that I was feeling from the childhood that I was, from the life that I was living, the abuse at home, here, watching my dad abuse my mother, and the constant fear and anxiety, and just the trauma of my life. It was just so hard to bear that I learned to bury my feelings. I think one of my coping skills was to, I guess the proper word for it is disassociate. And you learn to go inward and stuff all your feelings so that you don't feel. And I'm sure in different backgrounds that people come from, the pain can be anything. It can be from, domestic violence, or being sexually abused, or being ignored, or just not having your needs met, not being valued, not getting the attention from your parents that you need. Whatever the case may be, there's a lot of pain involved. I don't think you can even have an eating disorder if you're not full of pain. So I think the eating disorder becomes one of the coping skills to deal with the pain. I remember when I was 12 and it developed slowly over time, it was another coping mechanism to not feel the pain that I was feeling, because I became so obsessed with my body and with food and eating and calories and exercise and being thin, that it took my mind off of the grief that I felt and the pain that I felt and the loneliness that I felt and the fear and the anxiety and not being loved and not being good enough and not being able to meet other people's expectations. And it was just so painful and so hard to bear all those feelings that the eating disorder, the anorexia, was a way to cope instead of going to drugs or alcohol or shopping or pornography or whatever people use. There's all kinds of coping skills, all kinds of addictions. An eating disorder is just another coping mechanism because you don't want to feel pain. And I remember when I was in the throes of this thing, when I was starving myself and not eating and binging and being so obsessed about my weight that it took my mind off of the pain, and I literally got to the point that I could not feel. Not only could I not feel the bad feelings, but I couldn't feel the good feelings anymore. I didn't feel anything, but it was good. I liked not feeling because I knew if I felt, it was not going to be nice. And so I just remember being so obsessed with those kind of things, and you develop rituals. I remember I had to weigh myself every day, and it was never enough. I didn't lose enough. I had to lose more, and I would stand in front of the mirror every day and hold on to my hip bones to make sure they were protruding enough that I knew I was thin. And if they weren't sticking out as much as the day before, I would have to starve myself more because it had to be less and less, and there had to be more bone showing. And I would look at that every day and feel my hip bones and get on the scale, and even really strange rituals, like when I took my shower, if I didn't write a certain thing on the shower door, that I would gain weight. So it's like wacko. It's you get crazy in your head, and you just develop all these strange habits and rituals and things like that. And no matter what anyone says to you, they can say you're beautiful. They can say, but you're so thin, you don't look good, you're sick, whatever. You view yourself differently. You don't see how thin you are. You see yourself fat. Even though you can look at other people that are thin and say, whoa, they're really thin, but you don't see yourself that way. You're blind to it. So even with this girl, this Eugenia Cooney, she doesn't see her bones sticking out like that. She doesn't see herself the way that we see her. So I don't believe what people are saying about, she's doing it for views and to make money and all that kind of stuff. She's sick. She doesn't see herself the way other people see her. And I'm sure that if anybody that knows her or would spend any time with her would see that once you start peeling away the layers, the girl is in pain. She probably hates herself and thinks she's no good and not good enough. And so the more she gets negative responses from people, because she already doesn't feel good about herself. She already at such a deep, painful level hates herself and doesn't feel good enough, that any kind of negative comments and stuff are going to eat her up inside and make her feel even worse because she already doesn't like who she is. People with eating disorders usually have major problems with pleasing other people and needing approval so badly. They'll do anything to have approval. It's a nightmare. I remember, I went through it for about 1.5 years or so, and then switched over my addiction to drinking for a couple of years, and that took away the pain for a while. But then when I came to know the Lord and I stopped drinking and all that, I did struggle a little bit again with my eating. I never ever starved myself again, and I never got super thin, but I still struggled with the low self-esteem and the problems of my value and that kind of thing. I did struggle with that for a couple of years, but it definitely, there's so much to it. There's so much to how the person actually views themselves and feels about themselves and wants to avoid the pain of facing how hurt they are inside. But I know for myself, until you begin to actually face your own pain, face yourself, deal with the deep-seated issues that are inside of you that hurt so bad, until you're willing to do that, and you've got to get the courage to deal with your pain, to face it, and to start working on it. And it is not easy, and it does not happen overnight, because I'm still dealing with my own pain. I have not dealt with eating disorder issues in many, many years, 40 years, probably around 40 years, because I was very young, but I still have a lot of the same pain that I am looking at from the childhood trauma and those kinds of things. So I just want to encourage anybody that's watching this that does have issues with an eating disorder, please get help. Please start dealing with your pain. It's the only way you're going to actually get better. And anybody that knows someone with an eating disorder, please understand it's coming from a place of deep, deep self-hatred and loathing and pain and hurt that they are afraid to deal with and look at. So please be patient with them and just love them and encourage them. Thank you for watching this. I hope it made sense, and I hope that maybe it can help somebody to understand what's behind an eating disorder. Thanks for watching.